Welcome to the KidMin podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything KidMin
and pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are together in a different location. Dr. Virginia and I actually took a couple of days and came to Sandestin in Florida and just spent some time working on some upcoming projects that we have. And while we were together, we thought we would actually record a couple of episodes. Yay! So that way you could just sort of see us interacting with each other as opposed to just us sitting in our offices every single time you see us.
So we are excited to be here together, be recording, be planning. We're doing all kinds of different planning right now, which is exciting. We're planning for CBC in January, Children's Pastors Conference. So if you're going to be there, make sure to stop by and say hello. But yeah, and it's funny, in today's episode, we're talking about time management and planning your time and scheduling and that sort of thing. And so, I feel like we have been doing that as well.
I feel like that was what inspired us for this topic, is that we were actually talking yesterday about just our long range planning and looking at dates and when things are due and things that we're wanting to do. And we were talking about our planners because we have our planners with us. And so it just kind of got us started thinking about, how do you manage your time? How do you plan what you're going to be doing each day? Because with children's ministry, there's always something that needs to be done. There's always something that pops up that you aren't expecting. And so you really do have to have a schedule, a plan for your week so that you get accomplished the things that you need to accomplish. Because if you don't take that time to plan, then you're constantly running behind. And so, I don't know about you, Dr. Virginia, I have hit this place in my life that I am so tired of being behind all the time because I do tend to always be doing a million things and so much is going on. And I have really been working a lot to try to schedule better and to think through the things that I need to accomplish and try to get some things done ahead or a little sooner than I normally would. So I don't feel that sense of stress and urgency of trying to get things done at the last minute.
Yeah, and I think also thinking through the things that we are committing to, thinking through the things that we can or should say no to, thinking through the things that we need to do personally or we can delegate. So there's so many just facets to trying to plan our time well.
Well, and one of the things I think we talked a little bit about was, earlier this year, I took some time off. I went to Mayo Clinic to do some work for a chronic illness that I've been dealing with. And a big portion of what they taught us and what we discussed was having a plan, making goals, making sure that you have a daily plan of what you want to accomplish so that you can make sure that you are taking the time to do the important things, not just the urgent things. And I actually, while we've been down here in Florida, I actually went back to Mayo to do some follow-up. And that was, again, something that they just reminded us during the follow-up even was, are you keeping up with your schedule? Are you writing down your schedule for every day? Are you really planning? Because it's such an important piece of not just dealing with a chronic illness, but also just an important piece of making sure you get everything accomplished that you want to accomplish so that the important things don't get buried in the urgent. I think that we first need to talk about what I know everybody wants to know because I mentioned planners. And so for me, if I'm watching somebody talk about things like this, I'm like, ooh, tell me about your planner and how you set it up. And that was actually what we started talking about yesterday that sort of jumped us into this topic was talking about our planners. I think I've mentioned in earlier episodes that I do love to use a good digital planner. And I had been using a digital planner for a very long time. And I do love my digital planner. But once I started doing the work with Maya this year, they really recommended moving to a paper planner for a little while. I don't know if there was necessarily like a specific reason why they had that, other than, they had a specific way they wanted us to set up our planner. So I think that was part of it. But I think too, just having paper to pencil kind of thing was something. So I committed for this year to really work with a paper planner again for a little while. And I definitely may go back to my digital planner because I did like having it with me all the time. I am having to actually like take pictures of my planner so that I'm sure I have the information with me because I don't carry it, and I'll show it to you in just a second. But I think that planners are very personal, and I don't think that there's one best planner for anybody to use. I think you have to think about, how do you want to plan and what is going to be most beneficial to the way that your mind works and the way you think.
And I think too, and in talking about having a paper planner, one of the things that comes to mind is the research that says, like, for example, with note taking at school, that if you handwrite your notes, it helps you to remember it better than if you just type them. And so I do think there is something to like handwriting everything that you need to do. Yeah. Although I do set reminders in my phone if I need to, remember a certain thing or be somewhere at a certain time. I will certainly use that as well. But yeah, I am definitely a big fan of the paper planners myself. So yeah, I find that for me, primarily using a paper planner, but then also using some digital reminders has worked out to be a good system.
Right. And I think that's it. The thing is this, your planner is not controlling you. You're controlling your planner. So one of the things for me, I tend to be a perfectionist in things that I do, which can be very annoying. But also what I can do in my head is that if I miss a day or a week on a planner, or if I don't fill out things, sometimes I think, oh, well, I'm done. I haven't and I have to really remind myself, there's not a rule to it. There's not a rhyme or reason that has to be a certain way. This is a tool to help me. So I can create it any way I want to. I can skip things if I want to. And actually, I've even, for this particular one, I have been using whiteout tape.
Oh, I do. I use it all over mine.
Yeah, to cover, like if there are, because sometimes a planner will have you set certain goals that I'm not interested in. And so I'll cover that up and I'll change. Then I can, if I need to delete something. So I just have really tried to make the planner be more beneficial to me than me feel like I have to change the way I plan for a specific planner.
Yeah. And I will say too, like, there is like such a variety of like price points and different kinds. Like, I know there are people who have like the super fancy ones where you can like edit everything before you buy it and get it exactly what you want, and it's like a major financial investment. Or like me, up until this year, I've always just gone to Target and bought the exact same brand, the exact same kind. Just like what you said, kind of used it in the way that worked best for me. So yeah.
So what kind are you using right now? What do you have?
So I'll show it. It's like it's well used. I don't know. There we go. It's very well used and well loved. So this they actually, as of I guess this year for 2025, aren't making this particular style anymore. But what I love about this kind of planner is that I can see an entire week at a glance. So I've got Monday through Sunday. And I don't know why planners do. I like that planners do this. I don't know why they do it, since Sunday is officially the first day of the week.
Right.
But in the planner, it ends up at the end. But that works fine for me because I'm planning ahead to Sunday. So it works.
Yeah.
And I like that it's Monday through Sunday and it's divided up by hour. This particular one goes from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so I love that I can schedule specific meetings, specific tasks at the times when I want to have them. So I can flop it open, look at my whole week, see what times I have meetings, what times I have obligations, and then what times I can, work other things into my schedule. And then also it obviously has like a month view as well, where I can fill in the major events throughout the month and just take, a broad overview of each month and each week, and then break down each day by the hour. And so I found another similar one on Amazon that's set up very similarly to where it's also set up by the hour. And then I have the whole week here. This one, kind of like what you're talking about, this has more little spots for to-do lists and goals where you can write in your goals and like check them off. So I don't know that I'll necessarily use all of that, but seeing my week at a glance and then having every day simultaneously, broken down into hours is what's been super, super helpful for me to be able to see my time visually and structure it and break it down into the ways that are going to work best for me.
Right.
So,
well, and that was why when I first left Mayo and was starting to work on my schedule, the very first one I purchased, I did a Clever Fox planner that it was a 3-month planner, because I felt like, for me, those first 3 months was really where I was supposed to focus on my new schedule and all the things that I needed to learn to do. And so it worked out perfectly for me to do a 3-month. And I literally did one that had a page for each day, because I felt like I was still and it had the hours broken out, but I was still just trying to figure out every day, like, what did I need to do? The thing that stressed me out about that, though, and I used it very faithfully for those first 3 months, that the thing that stressed me was that I did have to look page wise back to be able to see what was happening each day. It did have a week in review kind of page, but I couldn't see everything. I kept flipping pages a lot. So this time what I did, and actually I did the Clever Fox again, because I liked the format. I liked the way it was laid out. And I put my stickers. You can see I have all my different stickers on it for this. But the one that I got this time is actually, and again, we know that you can't see it very well in the picture, but it is a week at a time, and it's broken up into hours. And this one is from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And it also gives you ways to make goals for each part of work-life balance. It also gives you to-do list areas and habit trackers, which for me right now, a habit tracker is really important because I'm trying to remember certain things that I have to do every single day. And so figuring out how to do that has been really important, but it also gives me a lot of space to write other things, because at the beginning of the planner, it has a lot of planning pages, and I literally spent time and again, I know you can't see it very well, but I literally spent time writing down all the important things that I learned while I was at Mayo, and the things that I needed to try to remind myself to do each day, each week, each month. And so I have that written at the beginning of the planner, and then I can use that when I'm writing out each page to remind myself of these things. So I have liked this a lot. I told Virginia, I didn't mean to buy the hardback one. I thought I was buying the softback one because it's a little lighter. This one's a little heavier. But again, for me, I use this more for the planning aspect, because I am not running around a church building right now all the time, and I don't have to carry it with me to a lot of different places. All of my meetings are in the same office. All of the things I do is all in the same place. So it's not too hard. But I do think if I do this again, if I don't go back to my digital planner the next 3 months, then I may actually try to get the lighter one so that it's a little easier to carry around. So you do want to think about those things too when you're picking a planner. It's like, do you want it small enough to fit in a bag?
Yes.
Do you want it big enough that you can write a lot on it? What do you want to do with it?
Because that was the thing that I loved about this particular, because this one that I used to buy from Target every year was a Day Designer planner. I mean, it was like $12. I mean, it's not expensive. But I loved how compact it was. And so my new one that I got just came from Amazon, and it is much larger. But I mean, I'll just lug it around. I'll just lug it around all my meetings.
Well, and that's what this is my box I got from Amazon as well. And so it is a little bit more pricey, but again, I like the layout so much. It was worth it to me. I think it was closer to like $30, but again, it gave me everything that I wanted. And so I was really, really pleased with it. And so, but the idea here and what we're talking about is the importance of prioritizing your tasks and your time. And I know it sounds crazy to think what we're asking you to do is to take more time to do something when you're already overwhelmed and busy. But I can promise you, blocking out planning time for the month, for the year, for the day. Marking out time on your calendar to plan is going to help you so much, because it's going to give you that ability to be able to prioritize and to think through what you need to accomplish, and making sure that you're keeping the important things, because there are going to be a billion people telling you what's urgent, but you're the person that knows what's important.
Yes. Yeah, because I think one thing that is so easy for us in ministry, and probably easy for lots of people out of ministry too, is to just feel swamped by tyranny of the urgent. To feel like there are so many people wanting some of your time, so many needs that you need to devote time and attention to. But it really is so important to think about the things that are, most important, that are, crucial, or that are mission critical, and schedule time for those things, and then work the other things around the mission critical things.
Because if you don't plan that way, then they don't get done.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a lot, those important things that we do, the planning, the blocking things, the scope and sequence kind of work, the your goals and the things that you want to accomplish in your ministry. Those are things that are really easy to constantly get pushed back in importance, because so many other urgent things, volunteers and emergencies and hospital stays and new babies and all of these things come. And it's not that they're not important. They are very important. But if you don't plan for the other things too, they do tend to get pushed back into the side, and they never tend to happen. And so that's why it's so important for you to be diligent to make sure that you make those plans. I think everybody has heard the story about the man with the jar and the rocks and the sand and the water. That if you tried to fill a jar with everything first, the sand, the smaller rocks and the bigger rocks and the water, and you just kind of try to dump it all in, it's the jar is not large enough. You can't fit everything in. It all just comes out.
Yeah.
But the idea is you take the big rocks, and if you put the big rocks in first, and if you've never seen this demonstration, you can look it up on YouTube. There's a billion ways to the rocks, water, jar. There's a billion people that have done it. But it's amazing to watch them if you put the large rocks in first, and then you fill it with the pebbles, and then you fill it with the sand, and then you fill it with the water. It's amazing how much can actually fit in the jar. But the things have to be done in an order for that to work. And that's the idea with your time management. You have to put in the important things first, and you can't let other people put sand and water in your jar. You have to be able to sit down and say, these are the things that I need to accomplish. These are the things that are important to my ministry, that are important to me. And these are the things that need to be accomplished. And so that's what's so important about planning.
And some of the, these are some ideas from our favorite guy, Carey Nieuwhof. I love his podcast. We love his podcast. We love his books. One of his more recent books, At Your Best, and just throughout different podcast episodes as well, he talks about knowing when you work best, what time of day you work best, that you're most productive, most effective, you can focus the best, and putting your deep work at that time. Intentionally carving out time, putting it on your schedule, writing it down, plugging it into your phone calendar, whatever you need to do to set aside time during that time of day when you work best to do the deep thinking, to do the planning, to do, if you're preparing a lesson, putting that deep work during the time when you work and think the best, and really sheltering that time from interruptions. And then also conversely, setting aside time that is your meeting time, that you are like your office hours, like a professor or something, to where if someone comes up to you and they say, oh man, I've got this difficult thing going on in my life, I want to meet, can we meet tonight at 9? And you're like, I'm normally in bed at 9. I'm normally, yeah. So, and you're like, or they say, oh, can I meet you tomorrow morning at 8:30? And that is your most productive time. And that you have that time set aside to get your deep work done. It is totally okay to say, hey, I can't meet you at that time, but what if we meet at 11? What if we meet at 2? Having that alternate meeting time set aside on your schedule, to where you can be strategic with your time and how you use it. And most of the time, people, they're going to be like, oh, okay, that's fine. Or, oh, no, I can't do that. What about this day? But I think it's okay for us to set those boundaries and to have that conversation with people. Because I think a lot of times we feel like we have to be constantly available, perpetually available. Anytime they want to meet us, we have to say yes. But it really is okay to have that structure in our schedule and in our time. We all know that emergencies are going to come up, that someone's going to be in the hospital and it's happening right now, and we've got to go up there.
Right.
So those things are always going to happen.
Right.
But there's so many times when it's not genuinely urgent, and we can schedule that meeting for a different time. And so I think having those times identified in your schedule and your calendar, write it on there if you need to, and planning your time around that is so valuable.
Well, and I think that that's a mistake that I've often made in my life, is that if I think in my head, well, I'll be interrupted by urgent things or emergencies. There's always somebody in the hospital. I've been dealing with sick family members over the last few years. So, somebody needs to go to the doctor or something's happening. And so my brain wants to say, well, there's no reason for me to plan because I'm going to get interrupted anyway. But the thing is this, there are always going to be those emergencies and those interruptions. It's just life. There's no way for you to work around it. So if you can plan, even if you are thinking, I might get interrupted this day with an emergency, you might not. And so you have that opportunity that if you plan it, then if you don't get interrupted, then you have a list, you know what you're going to be accomplishing. You can move that to the next day if you need to, because if something comes up. But the idea is that we don't let that mind trick mess with us of thinking, well, I'll just always be interrupted because things are always crazy, so I can't plan. Well, you might not be able to plan for every day, but you can set out those ideas and those thoughts and those plans, and then work around what happens during the day, and it's okay. The other thing that I think is really important to remember is that each of us work differently, and that's okay. We have this mistaken idea that the early bird gets the worm, which is actually not even true, because if I read things right, worms are nocturnal. I don't know. I remember seeing something about the birds don't even actually get worms in the morning. But the idea is that we have been taught that you have to do things in the morning if you want to be productive or if you want to get things done well. But honestly, my husband likes to work in the evenings so much better, and he is so much more productive. If I try to get him up at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock to do something in the morning, he's miserable and he can't think and he doesn't. But he gets things done at 11 and 12 o'clock at night when I am already fast asleep. So I don't try to force yourself, because I actually think that there's been studies done. If I remember reading about studies that say that if you are a night person, if you are a morning person, it's just the way that your rhythms are naturally occurring. You can't force those to change. And so don't feel like you have to force yourself to have certain times that you have to do things. Obviously we have meetings at certain times and there are events and things that we have to do, but for big projects that you're working on, for things that are important to you, you feel like you work better on, you plan your schedule and let that work. Don't feel like that you have to force yourself to do something in order to be more efficient, because that's just not true. One of the things that I always wanted to make sure that I had were deadlines for things that needed to be done. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first things I was doing this morning when we were starting to talk about some plans. I was like, okay, I need to think about, when is this due? When do we have to have it ready for review? When do we have to have it ready to send off? And so it's really important that you do set deadlines for yourself, because if you don't set a deadline, it's really a natural tendency to just keep putting it off. Okay, I don't have to have this done. I don't have, so if you can set deadlines for yourself, things that you need to have things accomplished by, then that's going to really help you as you plan to encourage you to keep up with the things that need to be accomplished.
And even sharing your deadlines with another person, even if it's a deadline that you set for yourself that doesn't necessarily have like an outside consequence outside of, what you're just trying to accomplish for yourself, sharing it with another person to be like, hey, in 2 weeks, can you send me a text message and ask if I've finished, XYZ? So setting those deadlines and even asking for a little bit of outside accountability to where, oh man, they're going to text me in 2 weeks and ask if I finished this. And they don't even have to understand what it is that you're doing. They don't even have to, you just have to know that text is coming and that someone is going to be following up with you about it. Can be so helpful in just staying on task, staying on your deadlines and getting things done.
I use the notes and the reminders apps on my phone a lot to remind me of upcoming things. Have I worked on this yet? Have I finished this yet? To kind of remind me. I also love to have goals that I set for myself for how much I want to accomplish in a day, because I can tend to get very singularly focused. And so like if I'm writing, one of the things I do a lot when I'm working on a project is that I will set myself a goal of I want to have, 100 words written, by this time of the day, or I want to have, this chapter finished by this particular week. So that way I can try to make sure that I'm staying on task, but also not letting myself get so caught up in it that I end up working on it and not accomplishing any of the other things that I want to do. Because I do tend to get very singularly focused. So it helps me if I start to break down projects in these little bits to help me make sure that I get things accomplished. So really, when you start to try to plan out your week, and I do love, I will have to say, I love to plan. I love to organize. I love to, I am one of those people that if I see a podcast or an episode of something on this, I'm going to look at it because I want to learn more about it because I enjoy doing it. And one of the things that I have really sort of learned that I need to do, that if I think about what I'm going to be doing each day, if I have a general idea of something that I do each day, it helps me to be able to plan and to organize and to accomplish things better. So like, for example, even with like cleaning my house, I have certain things that I do on Mondays. Mondays for me are bathroom days. That's when I clean bathrooms. On Tuesday is my dusting day. And so that's when I dust, because what tends to happen is, like what I mentioned before, is that I get singularly focused and I will spend all day long trying to get my house clean, and then I can't get anything else done. So I started to have to kind of divide things into certain days so that I just focus on one task. And then by the end of the week, everything is done. And then also that gives me more time to be able to work and to do things. I don't get too caught up in trying to do certain tasks. So there's certain things I do every day. And so I think that worked really well for me when I was on church staff as well, because I really tried to look at my week and think about my days as certain things that I made sure that I did each day during the week, so that was just my day to accomplish this task. And again, just like we were saying before, it doesn't matter if there was somebody in the hospital or a baby being born. Yes, that would interrupt my schedule for that week and that would change things. But generally, so I know that for me, the last church where I served, Fridays were my day off of the week. Our pastor allowed us a day off during the week because obviously we were working on Sunday, because we had Sunday morning services. We had Bible study in the mornings, and then we had Sunday evening services as well. So we were working pretty much all day on Sunday. So Friday was my Sabbath. It was my day off. And so that was my day that I really tried to protect. I'm not saying that sometimes I didn't have to do things on Friday, because you just do. But I really tried to protect that day as much as I possibly could. Mondays, that was my day to look at how we did things on Sunday. It was my day to look over our visitors and look at our attendance. It was the day that I sent out my cards for birthdays for the week, or to check on people, those kinds of things. It was sort of my volunteer schedule review. I looked at how things went on Sunday to kind of plan for the next week. So that was my Mondays. My Tuesday was our staff meeting day. So the mornings were always completely full with staff meeting. And then my afternoons, that was when I would try to set things up for Wednesday, like make sure I had all the materials we needed for Wednesday night, to make sure I had everything laid out for our volunteers, to make sure the classrooms were ready, so that way on Wednesday, I wasn't running around like crazy on Wednesday trying to get ready for Wednesday night. I really tried to use Wednesday for my more big picture work, because I knew I'd be interrupted a lot on Wednesday, because there were a lot of people at the church on Wednesdays, because we had Wednesday night dinner. And then we had our choirs. That was when we had children's choir, and it was when we had our missions events and things on Wednesday night. So I always knew I would be interrupted. So that was my Wednesday was the day that I worked on more big picture things, that if I got interrupted, it was okay. It wasn't going to affect anybody else, because I'd already gotten ready for the day. And then on Thursday was my setup for Sunday, because my Friday was my day off. So Thursday was my Sunday day. It was my day that I worked on making sure I had everything ready for Sunday, that the classrooms were set up, that the welcome things were set up, that the check-in system and all of our check-in materials and all of that was set up. So those were sort of my big rock items that I had for the week. And then I worked in all of the smaller rocks and things all through that schedule. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I tend to think in terms of a lot of backwards planning, either in the sense of like, okay, I know that our, worship hour schedule goes out, on the Thursday before the next Sunday of the new month. And so planning backwards from that, I know I have certain days when, certain volunteers will come in during the week to help, prepare for Sundays and for Wednesdays. And so I think, okay, if I've got this person coming in to help prep for Sunday, what do I need to have ready for them whenever they walk in the door to do the thing that they've volunteered to do, the way that they've volunteered to help? And so I tend to do a lot of backwards planning. So I guess in some ways it would be forwards planning and then backwards planning. So I try to have my calendar, my planner filled out typically 3 months in advance for everything that's coming up, and then start working backwards from that. Some things we got to work backwards farther than 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
VBS is a great example. But I really try to look ahead for weeks, for months, even a whole year ahead. And plan backwards from that. And so that's helped me so much with not feeling like I'm scrambling, not feeling like things are getting on top of me, that I know what's coming and I'm planning ahead. And I tend to, or I try to at least, build in some buffer time. Like a great example is this Sunday, we are putting out our family Advent kits. We're making those available. And so I start ordering the supplies for those in September. And so I start, looking around for what we're going to do, start putting in the orders, start lining up volunteers to put those together, for October. And so trying to backwards plan and build in a little bit of buffer time has been really helpful in helping, feel like these things aren't on top of me, that I'm on top of them. So.
And we actually have an episode that we did earlier on the big picture planning for an entire year, like how you need to plan. Because one of the things that I thought of when you were talking about that was that I was meeting with a pastor one time about just his administration work, because he was not super strong with administration. His favorite thing was to work with the kids more, and so he didn't tend to look at the daily things very well. And so I was meeting with him in his office, and I was looking, and he had this great year planner that was, one of those that you could use the write-on wipe-off markers with, that he had on the wall. And I want to think that maybe this was in August or early September, and he had everything detailed planned for September, October, November. But he didn't have anything written for December, January, and nothing for the next part of the year. And one of the things that I really talked to him about was that when you're a children's minister, you really have to have the year in your mind, and all of the big things put on that calendar really early, because we've talked about this before. If you're going to plan for VBS planning starts really, I started it in November
Yeah.
because I did a lot of training. So I had to start it really early, but I definitely started it in January. January was when I started planning for Vacation Bible School. And we talk about this in that episode where we talk about the full year planning. But the idea is this: you really do need to have a good big picture overview of every event you're going to have for the year. And the best time to really do that is if you can find some time during the summer to plan for the whole next year, to plan for your fall and all the way through, so that you have those big picture items, just like what we were talking about with the rocks. If you have your big picture items and you know what you need to work on and what you need to plan for, and then you start putting the smaller things in as you go along. But you really need to have that overview to help you to be able to plan the best that you can for your ministry.
Yeah, and prioritize. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we hope this has been helpful. We just wanted to give you a little bit of information about time management and how we handle the smaller portion of our days and how we think through what we're going to be doing each day during the week. And just as always, we appreciate you and thank you for taking time to spend with us. We're really excited about the things that we have planned. We're coming up on our 100th episode soon. And so we have so many things that we want to be doing over this next year, because that's what we've been doing is our long range planning. And so we're looking forward to finding more ways where we can meet you where you are, where we can be just a help to you and your ministry and your families that you serve. And so we would just ask that you would like and subscribe and all the things. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.